agreement was signed in November, there were two conditions. Two-in-one conditions, that we should have a domestic debt restructuring and then an external debt restructuring, what we call the DDE, for the domestic. If you read the IMF program document, it will tell you that they are still not satisfied, with even our domestic debt, regarding pension, the Bank of Ghana elements, and others. But more importantly, if you read the statement which was issued that we're going to be taken to the board of May 19th, against the background that Ghana was not listed for the May country, it said that the board had agreed to meet under the assurances of the external creditors committee, which was chaired by France and China. So that work also remains undone. So I just want to caution against the incitements which came, with the SNA, that there is still more work to be done, which may come with the first review or before. But having said that, it is still a good thing for the country that the IMF board has met. And the direct benefit of that is that we have received, the $600 million, which is a condition, for we satisfying everything and going to the board. So that money has hit Bank of Ghana. Hopefully it will be used by Bank of Ghana to support the reserves, because Bank of Ghana has reduced our reserves significantly. If you read the document again, it says that it came as low as half a month of import cover. The lowest we have often come is 3 months and 3.5 months of import cover. I would hope that much of this money, unlike the SDR and unlike the COVID loan and others that went into the budget, will be allowed to remain with Bank of Ghana, so that we intensify our efforts to finance the budget from taxes, instead of taking that money, from Bank of Ghana again and using it for budget, expenditure.
So on that,
the reason is that would also support the city.
Okay.
If your reserves are solid, it will support the city.
So on that, I wanted to find out, where do you think the money must be fixed, or where do you think the money must be looked at?
Well, the point I'm making is that usually the money from the IMF goes to the Bank of Ghana to support, to support the reserves. Because when you deplete your reserves, one of the reasons you go to the IMF is that you deplete your reserves. It's not just the debt and fiscal challenge that's facing you. You deplete your reserves. And one of the reasons we deplete the reserves is that when the fiscal becomes, too heavy and the government cannot raise enough money for expenditure, what they do is that they go and take the reserves that we have, both CD reserves and dollar reserves, from Bank of Ghana. And then that means that there's less reserves to support, the dollar. So I would aim, edge for a judicious balance between, even if we need some of that money for the budget, because, we are dependent, the budget is dependent on borrowing, because we haven't reduced expenditure. And the flagship, review is now to come in a strategy, if you read it. So there's no strategy now, so we need to do those things quickly so that we stop taking money, from Bank of Ghana and other state institutions to support the budget. That is what zero financing meant for us. If you remember 2016, the Mama administration had to do zero financing. Because of borrowing and others for supply, do so and all those. We had to consolidate the budget as quickly as possible, so that we can stabilize the city through the reserves.
What we want to find out, yes, we are there. The money is in. It's supposed to go to Bank of Ghana to boost the economy. Our cedi to dollar rate will be fantastic based on what has come. But are there, during your time, what are some of the conditions that were given? And this time, what are some of the conditions that we are to look at?
We are the same. But before I come to the conditions, I think we should listen to His Excellency the President carefully.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's been very frank in telling us that the IMF program will not be the end of our problems.
Our problems, yeah.
And so there's more work for us to be done, which is why we did a homegrown policy and set up a sinking fund. We needed that money. We could have put it in the budget. But we set up the sinking fund to pay down His Excellency President Kufuor's first sovereign bond. We used $550 million of our own oil money to pay it down from 750. So there was left with 200 million, which we borrowed from the World Bank 2015, together with the debt we had accumulated to pay single spine. We borrowed from the World Bank to refinance them because they were falling due. So the remaining 200 was actually from that source, and with the promise that we shall use the sinking fund to support the repayment over 15 years. We've gone nearly 10 years, and we have rather depleted the sinking fund and accumulated more debt instead of reducing it. But it worked. We were able to bring down, and as a result of which we started borrowing at, slightly lower rates just before we left office. But if you look at the conditions that are there, and you can ask your producers to look at it already, what are they asking us to do? They are asking us to intensify our revenue modernization reforms. What are the reforms that we have to intensify? Remember, they are strengthening GRA and creating a Ghana Revenue Authority. Remember, merging the VAT service and the IRS to be the domestic tax division. If you remember, creating small, medium, and large taxpayer offices, which have now been dismantled. And then, more importantly, if you remember, digital electronics. It didn't start, today. Remember West Blue? Remember Single Window, which is now ICOMS? We automated customs. And the next step was to automate the domestic tax division. All this has stalled. They are now in the program. So it means that after 8 years, we are being asked, to go back to the homegrown policy that the Mama administration put in place and finish the job. We have accumulated arrears. There's something called, they've increased the arrears in the budget from 1.9 provision that we need, in our budget for 2020 to about, I think 20 something or 40 something, billion. I forget the figure. But that's significant, even if it's 10 billion. And it tells you the arrears, that are in the pipeline, which we haven't been paying. We created a contract database. We are being asked to go back and look at it. And then the third example is gift meals. You've seen gift meals being mentioned all over. Hyperon. These were all things which, and then the HRMI system. These were all things which Mama administration put in place, which were stopped. And we started spending, the expenditure outside gift meals. Remember that thing came up, and we started putting bailout costs and things under. Today we are talking about ETLA again. And they are there. They are being repeated. So if you ask me what we need to do, go back to those policies. They are not Mama policies. These are global policies which other countries have been implementing, which we also decided to implement. So we should come together as a nation, realize that some of these initiatives don't satisfy one party or the other. They benefit the nation.
Okay. Then back to the conditions.
Yes. The conditions. Oh, the conditions are some of what are, let me see if I...
Well, we know that, yes, when you are taken to IMF, it is all over in Ghana that especially the public sectors, they are going to freeze employment. People are now crying all around, knowing and believing that this year they will enter into any of the security service, any of the public service. but going to IMF, these are some of the conditions that they will come up with. Is it so? And during your time, is that what happened?
The question we have to ask is, did it work? Remember that we came at a heavy criticism.
Yeah.
It was a net freeze. It wasn't, and it is still a net freeze. Net freeze means that the civil service and public service have a capacity.
Okay.
Right? It's like your radio station. Is it what?
Ahobraseye.
I'm sure there are people, a lot of budding journalists from GIJ and others who would like to come and work.
Yeah, we have a chunk of applications. Yeah.
Yeah, you could bring 3 people to come and join you in the studio where you are doing only there's one person.
Yeah.
You can pay because your adverts and other income, can pay.
Yeah.
It's not going to, yes. So it's the same thing. And this has been recurring all the time.
Okay.
So our problem started with NAPCO. We put them on the public and civil service payroll. We removed them. We are owing them arrears. Right? So we should sometimes look at it internally. Right? When we face it, we decided, and I'm glad that we are all talking about infrastructure today. You remember when they say you don't eat infrastructure?
I remember.
Right? We are talking about infrastructure today. Because we turn attention to building infrastructure, so that we can use it to create jobs. Infrastructure creates jobs. And let me give you an example. If you if you start building an e-school, you need an architect.
Yeah.
The architect has got more jobs, so he will employ people from tech and other places who have done in architecture. You need laborers. You need accounts clerks. As you expand, your office will also expand. So infrastructure is not just for its sake. And then you have to renew infrastructure. You have to refurbish every year when you build infrastructure. Many of our schools. So what I'm saying is that we have to look for alternative means of creating jobs, which is what we're doing. And we came at a heavy criticism. Right, today we are being asked again to do the same thing. If you go to all the 17 programs, that clause is there. And that is because we all knew, it's not the fund that told us that we were using interest and compensation only to cover, it wasn't enough for our total revenue. I think we were having that debate ourselves internally before we went to the fund program. So the fund is only telling us self-evident. There is something that is already self-evident. And then, as I said, the fund is also asking, if you go to the conditionality page 74, so you see them there, the things that we have to do. We've done some of them, they call them the prior actions. But we are being asked to do, a bit more. For example, finalize a comprehensive stock taking of accounts payable. That's the arrears I was talking about. That's the first condition. And they'll come and see whether we really done that. At the end of next month, the date is there. But this was part of business. We were at the point where this was going to be part of business. And then we are being asked finalized strategy to strengthen the financial sector and rebuild financial institutions and buffers. Are we not back to ESLA, which was to be used, bailout costs? We are back to the same thing. The banks are, going to suffer a second time, or they are suffering already, right? Then we was published updated energy sector recovery plan. We had the energy sector recovery plan. That's why we did ESLA, which was to pay. We started paying VRA debt, was to pay the IPPs and everybody. Remember, we went to the World Bank for partial risk guarantee to use the gas and everything, so that we could bring the gas on stream. And where's that plan? Now we are being asked to do another plan. There's a fourth one. Publish a strategy after cabinet approval to streamline statutory funds. We've been doing this, we've capped the statutory funds. They have not been able to meet what we want to use them. So I just want to suggest that, the things that we are being asked to do were among things we used to do in the past, or were in the previous program and were stopped.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because of time, my very last question will be, assuming you are in the shoes of your brother now, Honorable Ken Oforiatta, what would you have done different as he led us to IMF?
You know, we always talk about what would you do differently. LEAP is not a new program. We have been asked to do social intervention through LEAP, that long word, livelihood empowerment against poverty.
Yep.
That's what we call LEAP, right? Which I believe started from other mills or even His Excellency Kufuor's, administration time. You see, so they are not new. So I'm saying that if I were in the streets, that we went back. If you talk about giftness, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you talk about giftness started as proof mark under the late Solomon. He was the one who was in charge when I was a civil servant. And then it continued under the Honorable Banredu, and then, fizzled out. So we use the acronym GIFTMIS, which is a new name for it. So even at our time, was it new? No, it was things that we were doing during SAP ERP day today. I mean, to their memory, Dr. Bojo is gone, Joabi, the architects of those things are gone. So we, the current generation, must remain faithful because we are going back to the very things which have been in IMF programs, and each time it's being repeated to us. So I would say that let us all go. Every NDC or NPP administration has done IMF program, right? So let's go back to those things. First, that's the first step. Then we can think about new things, and the new things should be not the things that we're doing as a developing country, but the new things should be what are the middle income countries doing? What did Emirates do to become a pillar? Dubai become a pillar. What is Botswana doing? Let me talk about Africa. Nobody's talking about Botswana because they are managing their resources. So that's why we also said let's use our petroleum to resolve just the way they use their diamond. We couldn't use our diamond, our gold, and other things. Then we can think about those new things that other countries that we have put in the homegrown policy, which will help us. So, short answer, let's go back to the old things, consolidate them, and do them better so that we don't keep going to the fund and getting money to do the same thing. And secondly, we can think about new things.
Let's go back to the old things.
Like using the new things like using the sinking fund, infrastructure fund, Ghana Exim. We borrow from, Ghana borrows from Turkey Exim, Ghana borrows from US Exim, Ghana borrows from China Exim, Ghana borrows from Korea Exim, and more Exim banks. They're only exporting to us, that's what Exim means. So why don't we also use our Exim bank to start also exporting? Even under AFCTA, we can use our Exim bank to incline. I had the president, talking about, the inter-Africa trade is very low and all that. If you don't have export credit and export guarantee, which is why we set up, Ghana Exim, which is like our cocoa board for cocoa farmers. Today, cocoa board is on its knees. Cocoa board was borrowing at LIBOR plus 2%, which is lower than the rate was, of cost of borrowing was lower than for the government itself. Today, it's on its knees. And these cocoa bills, which we had refinanced, is back again. So, my brother, we do old things, and then we think about new things that will move the nation forward.
Let me thank you so much for your time. And are you done with what you are putting up together this morning?
I'm still working on it. It's a fat time of documents. So one after another.
Okay. I'll be glad to have one and go through.
You're most welcome.
Thank you very much for your time, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Seth Terkpe, our former finance minister, and what is and Komono. But in the studio, he's not a finance minister. He is a journalist, and a good one, of course. Captain Kofi Thechi, over to you.
Oui.
Woye?
Seth Akasa. Woye. Seth Terkpe Akasa. Unfortunately, na me put one or two things being done.
Yeah.
In common ashasi no. Man to me, any in a year, the minimum. Yeah. Mete say no okay. Make a miyabu treaty be. DNT sorry see you call IMF. No, just say yes, you can bubble say be no crack name. ye wo sika bi ho ma ye di team ho no sa ho chire bere mu eno ne ye di betene ye nsa e wo so sa reserves no eno wo chire say duru bi a etumi hwea na de aka no ye jaw na so obi a mfa hwea me so wasene a na se wa fa hwe ho a wa hwe ho a bo so me nsa dia bibia be san firi hu mu abo to ntia ba nsa no am o mpese e be santini na wo se ntentem so ubowura mu na akopɛ mo ade firi baabi na eba be boa se na be ya ni ma be konkan ubusa na se ndi se akakra na aba na be boa ya na no so eba ne se no a eya na eboa yen sidi na ho odin ne kakra ema eno so tumi gina ne na so yi pam na wo che se eya na akwakoye se aban ekopɛ sika de ba be boa ne reserve no ema ne etumi gina ena ache so wo che se uhwemu a eniema eya na emwa yen ama ye ho otumi kire ye tutumirika de ko IMF ne bi eye se ekwan ye fa so a ye di ye hu ye sika ye kwan ye fa so ye hu sika ekuta ne bo ye ho ebra eto da bi a na ase ya hwe kese so anwu no ye bu nti bo se niam e wo se ye di sika ye esusu ewo ware e bai tre se ne yen ye wo na ama ye ho akwa yen kakra eno mu ene ya na akwakofa sansem na ba ena obusa ne se eya na yesi ye ko IMF a omo obrofo bi omde show se conditionalities eniema IMF fo no wo de beto no mo se yenye na sika no omde ma ye no ya ntumi anse no anase mpo yenye ansa no omde sika na ma ye no ubusa ne se ebra wo no na breso kane mampani John Mahama breso no ye so afọ ye sika sam so no omo so ko IMF ni bi na o hwe conditionalities anase conditions a IMF de ma wo mo sa bre no na be hwe ye ya call ne yi a wo de titie ni a sa conditionalities ana san hye mo ye de ma ye no ensoso ye wu mu ana no se ensoso ne de o nhye da hunu ensoso ye bia hye da bo mfiri se ya call ya mefu akọ aban besna akobia ni ho a wan call ya mefu da ensoso mo kwa enhye kro na ena wo de ema ye na obeka o mampani ni na do kwakufu ado wo di no kre pa de magana fo ebra o kan se no kre ni IMF no de yakọ nanso anu meyi nkonya se be kukuru sika sam de agina ho kire no wo se eno ya de ba ko a eya no kuro tru yo firi se IMF no ba be so wa sen nkire se eno na ba be kukuru na edu agina ho kopem se obeye niema yie emu bi ene ekwa fa so ya bromosia de eye niema wo se ohwemu a omo abere so sei na wo so mu ko bobosia na omo ne ba betuatua eka bi ana abeda mampani dada kofo na abere so single spine ho nsensem bi ne ho sikasem bi a na atie kamu na wo so nkupi sika de betua ukotua nso a ensi ho wo ho